Greetings, boys and girls across the cosmos. Welcome to another exciting edition of 10 to 1. I am one of your thrilling sci fi hosts, Josh, joined, as always, by the Encyclopedia Filmatica, Jen. How's it
Was
going?
that good. Full disclosure, it's been a terrible health week for me, so if I sound a little less enthusiastic, it is not the material. It's just my overall general health. So don't
And
read
it's
anything
not
into it.
me.
And it's never Josh. It's
Yeah.
never ever Josh. No. I'm gonna very quickly insert something into our little discourse before we
Oh,
start.
okay. Because I was
Uh,
getting worried when people start inserting things.
I well, I did, yeah, that's me. This list was perhaps way too revealing about the kind of movies that I am so drawn to. And
Oh,
I'll
really?
let it speak for itself, but man, the the theme, I shouldn't even say the theme. The it's kind of like being hit on the head with a hammer. So, yeah, you'll see as the list goes on, but wow, this was a really cool list to put together and yep, it was fun. Loved it.
I think narrowing it down became an issue for me after a while.
Hmm.
And for some of you longtime listeners, you're going to be awfully surprised at what's not on the list. I think
Oh.
because I have a type, and I talk some things up very much. They're not they're not going to be mentioned in this episode.
Oh.
So so get ready for not having that.
Wow. That's interesting. That is super interesting.
I'll go into the omissions later. That way, I can, like you said, let my list speak for itself.
I'm excited.
Well, I did have a little something prepared to talk about why tonight's topic was chosen. So, would you like me to get into that?
Absolutely. Tell us why.
All right. It would be easy to just say that the reason this topic was chosen is because it's spooky season, and what's a spooky season without costumes, right? Well, for once, this list goes my list in particular goes beyond the simple face value of a topic and becomes a look at one of the most important, but also most overlooked aspects of the film industry: wardrobe. When we meet a character on screen for the first time, we are given a split second look into their soul by what they are wearing. It is the costumer's job, as well as the wardrobe department, to find or even create styles and ensembles that will reflect the nature of the character they are dressing. As an audience, we sometimes take for granted the hundreds of labor hours that are expended on making the characters we love look cool or creepy. We don't get to see the discussions between producers and department heads that could last for hours but only consist of trying to answer questions like, should the suit have pinstripes? Or what kind of bag would she wear with those shoes? Or what type of Hawaiian shirt should our big fat party animal wear? Even when
Hmm.
the course is laid out by the writer or IP that content is adapted from, this is the department that has to make sure things are true to the original, or they have to make a choice that can alienate an audience by straying too far from the original vision. Wardrobe is important. One of the most unfortunate aspects of this department is that if done well, it will mostly go unnoticed. Tonight, we notice you. Tonight, we acknowledge the power that is costuming.
Awesome. Super awesome.
So, how about we kick things off? Jen, you got me too titillated. I gotta know what your number 10 is.
Okay. My number 10 is actually a movie that was bombed on Rotten Tomatoes. And I do mean bombed, and probably for awesome reason. Um, Although I saw this in the theaters, I paid money to go see this movie.
Okay.
And I absolutely loved it. And I will probably have to now like do a walk of shame or something for
I will
saying
poop
that.
myself if it's on my list.
It probably is not. It is the 19 hold on a second. Let me give it I gotta actually give the actual movie date. There we go. It's 2016. I didn't want to say 2015.
Oh.
It is the 2016 movie called Warcraft. It's loosely, and I do mean loosely, organized around the idea of World of Warcraft. The inception of this could have possibly been great, but let's talk about the costuming. Um, Listen, I don't really play a lot of World of Warcraft, although I have in the past. Just kind of dabbled in it a bit. And one of the things that I've always loved is the spectacle of the different both classes and races and how everybody is dressed. Well, the movie production of Warcraft is just as over the top as the video game. I mean, everybody has these like crazy designs to what they wear. Unless you're a woman and then you're just wearing skimpy clothes. But for the most part, I mean, at least all the men and the monsters. Wow, everybody is costumed so well. Now, I know that some of this is CG, but where we have practical effects, those practical effects costuming are truly amazing. The person who plays Anduin Travis Fimmel, uh, it's amazing. His costume was just, I don't even know how he acted in it. It was like so huge on him, but it's so awesome. And also the other thing about this that I loved was it really fit the world. So that's my number 10 choice. You can, fight me or make me walk of shame if you think it's terrible, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
As we saw in She-Hulk, sometimes the walk of shame ain't so bad.
Indeed. Thank you. Looking at you, Matt Murdock.
Well, my number 10 is actually a movie that I've talked about on this show before.
Oh.
It is my first repeat, I think. And sorry, I was not having any problems with my volume levels until just now, so had to bring that up. Okay. My number 10, 1998, David Zucker. It's basketball. I've talked about it before on the show, but the way it breaks down is like this. I decided to have one sports movie on my list because uniforms, they're a difficult task to create sometimes.
Right.
More so, fictional teams are even more difficult because you're kind of creating an entire, league in the wardrobe department. More so than that, a completely fictional league of a completely fictional sport. Basketball's primary goal of creating uniforms that combine basketball and baseball was probably very daunting. The uniforms themselves, basketball shorts, baseball jersey, they go that extra step with, the team color undershirts to really make it a professional looking uniform, and they just pulled that out of thin air. The story even really gets its start from a talk of wardrobe, as the characters say in the beginning. First you get the money, then you get the khakis, then you get the women. So it was an instant catalyst to creating the sport basketball. And hey, that's worth a mention in my book, any day of the week. Basketball is my number 10.
Nice. Very nice. I can see that too. I absolutely can see that. Um, I, m- and I have a feeling that as the list goes on, we may sort of uh, see where each other are diverging here. Okay, so my number 9 is a movie from 1966 called A Man for All Seasons. I don't know how many people. I mean, I feel like a lot of people know the story of A Man for All Seasons. It's King Henry, and his constant argument with Sir Thomas More, and ultimately, yeah, bad things happen to poor Sir Thomas More. It's based off of a Shakespeare. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say it's based off of Shakespeare. It's based off of um, a play, and it the screen adaptation lends itself perfectly to the movie format. I mean, it really is just it's an amazing adaptation. Okay, um, it has Robert Shaw, Orson Welles, Vanessa Redgrave, people that that I really resonate with. And back in the '60s, doing historical work meant basically that costuming was super important, maybe more important because we didn't have access to filler CGI. So, you had to really make everyone perfect, or that it wasn't going to happen. And A Man for All Seasons gives every single person associated with the king and then outside of the king's circle a presence based on their costume. They're all beautiful. The women especially get the most amazing costumes, but the men, and especially Henry, his costume is it's larger than life the way that we see Henry VIII. And to me, that's what makes the film, is that whenever we see Henry, we always see him as grand, as big, as and it's not just his body stature, it's more. It's his presence, it's his power, it's his everything. So I chose that movie as sort of I guess as like the one of the best ways of thinking about story and characters inside of the costume, that the costume is like a manifestation of the character that we're supposed to see. So, number 9, A Man for All Seasons, 1966.
Wow. If that's your number 9, that was a good choice.
I really do love that movie. It's one of my very most favorite movies.
Well, my number 9, it it's what I would look directly at when you said that your number 10 was a box office bomb. Because my number 9 is a box office bomb in every sense of the word, and quite frankly, widely considered just not a good movie. But if you're like me and you had HBO in the early 90s, it was on all the time. I'm talking about Craig Beeman's Mom and Dad Save the World from
Oh, dude, I
1992.
love that movie. That was so fun.
Yes, it was. Jeffrey Jones, Terry Garr, John Lovitz. It is a personal favorite of mine. It takes an average mom and dad, typical early 90s, attire. They're abducted by the, I don't even want to say evil Todd Spengo. He's just an idiot. But they're abducted by aliens and then separated on this planet, right? And part of their journey, individual journeys, is reflected through their wardrobe as Marge gets taken by the Emperor, and her wardrobe goes from how do you put it? Just typical housewife garb, slacks, shirt,
Yep.
to stunning, although oddly designed gowns. She's living in luxury as she's being held captive by the Emperor, ready to be his betrothed. Well, she's not ready, but that's why she's there to marry Todd. Dick Nelson, on the other hand, is taken in by a bunch of foraging morons who are just really dumb. But he has that typical, Outlander, brown, loosely fitting garb. Kind of the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to class of clothes. And even Emperor Todd's wardrobe is reflective of just how crazy he is. I mean, from the ballooning pantaloons to his taste for oddly designed hats. Mom and Dad Save the World had a wardrobe department that was very good, considering the movie they were putting together. It's a film baked in cheese, but I love every second of it, and that's why it is my number 9.
Nice. That is actually a really good choice, especially for creativity in wardrobe development. I mean, there's no there's no like manual to look up. Okay, Flash Gordon, but ordinary people getting involved in something that is way outside their scope. How are we going to dress them up? Also, one of the things that I also really love about that movie in terms of costuming is actually the kids, because the kids also are just like, everything is so normal about everyone. And sometimes we underrate the ability for costuming to make people seem like they are in the normal world, but it's an art. It is absolutely an art. You can't have costuming choices that are too outside of the norm, because then that calls attention to whatever it is that they're going to do. And so they make really conscientious, good choices. So good. I like that. Very good.
And yet, what you said is it's exactly right. You can't. It's I don't know how to put it. It's just, it wouldn't be as outlandish, the wardrobe on the alien planet, if things were weird on Earth.
Right. Right. Yes, the contrast is very, very stark. I almost picked Flash Gordon for my list and didn't, but I can see correlations. Okay, so my number 8 is a movie that I absolutely love and actually watch, I would say, fairly often. Uh Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And okay, put the humor aside if you
No.
can. Yeah, it's hard, but put the humor aside if you can. And think about any one scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And you come up with a level of just comedic perfection in just the costuming. I mean, where things need to be over the top, they are over the top. Where things need to be subtle and silly, they are subtle and silly. I'm thinking of the peasants in the
The
skit that they do
witch.
called the constant. Oh right. Oh, there's that one too where he meets Sir Bedivere. But think about the constitutional peasants where he says, "I am your king," and the peasants go, "Well, I didn't vote for you." The costuming choices are so well done that it makes the movie feel like there is a secondary level of comedy going on. It's just absolutely wonderfully done. I also really love uh, Arthur's. Actually, you know what? I love everybody. I love Bedivere's inability to have his faceplate stay up. He has to pull it up in order to look at people, which is always just. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that is actually funny. Little costuming choices that give the character a quirk, make the character seem like there's something else going on, and this movie kind of has it all. So that's my choice, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, for number 8.
I would say that pick,
Ick.
it cut it it could cut deep, but don't worry,
It's
it's
just a
just a
flesh
flesh
wound.
wound.
See, if I swear, if you've seen this movie, it's not. No, I said that wrong. If you like this movie, uh, you love this movie. If you've seen this movie and you're like, British humor, I don't get it, blah blah blah.
Get out.
Yeah, we may not be able to share cookies. Sorry, we'll have to have talk about that later,
Even my kids love that movie.
right? It is very funny.
That was a
So,
coconut.
what's your number 8?
Well, there are no coconuts in my movie,
Darn.
but it's from 2002 and directed by Marty Scorsese.
Ooh, always a
So,
good choice.
talking about Gangs of New York.
Oh, good choice. Excellent choice.
This might be one of the first movies that made me really pay attention to wardrobe because the depiction of class was very important in this movie. And what better way to show that off other than, you know, the higher class you are, the nicer clothes you wear, the finer cut you'll have. You'll have vests. You'll have a pocket watch. For some reason, plaid is in, and
Hmm.
not a ska band in sight. It's kind of weird. But and when, of course, the top hats. How could you forget the top hats? While if you weren't of a higher class, if you were Irish, you were just kind of wearing what you can get. But that's been done to death all over the place, right? You could watch almost any period piece and say, I don't know, let's just make it accurate. No, 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 no. What they had to do in Gangs of New York for one particular set piece in particular was make an audience able to differentiate between initially two um, rival gangs stand out in a major brawl. You had to tell who was on whose side immediately, and that was all to the wardrobe department. Where did I put it? Bill the Butcher's American natives are
Mm-hmm.
easily recognized by their nicer clothes and top hats, while the Dead Rabbits just like their color was red. So if they didn't have red clothes, they painted whatever they had available to wear.
Also, just to quickly inject something, Gangs of New York is one of the few movies that uses tailoring as also a systematic show of class. So where you see some of the more affluent and including well, everybody except the Dead Rabbits, really. They don't have any tailoring to their clothes at all. So their clothes fit very loosely, very differently on their body, and the other almost all the other groups have much more tailored clothes. You can really notice it when you're looking at well, you can notice it like when you see everybody getting off of the boat and then you see the people that are actually in the street. Makes a huge difference. So sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, I was gonna say that, but No, I guess I don't got to, so it's all good. But this is one of the few movies where you can watch with virtually no dialogue and understand who the people are. Because
Definitely.
their clothes tell a story. And that's why it's my number 8.
Man, that was such a good choice. I'm kind of sad I didn't put that on my list because that is an excellent one.
That's how I know it's a good choice.
Yeah, really. That is good. But I okay, so for my number 7, I actually went in the this is another movie that I absolutely love that really polarizes people, and some people really hate it, and I cannot understand why, because it is just awesome goodness. And also the costuming choices in this are so over the top, but over the top in like the best possible way. I don't know how you can't love what he did with the costuming, and it's like he said, okay, listen, we're going to have this kind of lighting, so we need this type of costuming because this is what's going to make our lighting shine and stand out. And I mean, like, again, I just, man, I totally love this. Okay, so it's Excalibur from 1981. Um,
Okay.
and uh, and and okay, so not everything in Excalibur clearly is historically accurate. There was no shining armor in the Dark Ages, but it doesn't matter. The costuming choices for Excalibur as a mythical King Arthur's court work so perfectly. And where there is shining armor, you'll catch lens flares. You'll catch all kinds of just kind of like brilliant star patterns that happen. You'll catch it where he's supposed to be the shining pinnacle of who he is. His armor is polished and perfect. Where he's supposed to be struggling morally, his armor is a darker tone without the sheen, and it's grittier. It's doesn't have all of the pieces that are attached to his other armor. um Mordred, who's King Arthur's son, has this amazing golden armor, which obviously instantly identifies him, but also as the golden child signifies a whole world of story exposition, which is sort of amazing. And I have to call out kind of this special feeling that you get by watching Guinevere go from being, kind of hardened, almost battle maiden, to being the queen with this gorgeous gown that is covered with these like shiny jewels that catch the light. It's such a perfect the costuming in Excalibur is almost a metaphor in and of itself, along with the movie, where Percival gets the Grail the last time. He has stripped off all of his armor, and he is basically just in his most. He's in a skin suit, basically. I mean, he's got like some white thing on, but it's like he stripped everything down. So even the costuming choice of strip off the costume in order to become the person that can receive the Grail is just absolutely epic. So as a movie choice, this movie feels like it really gives me so much with costuming, that a lot of movies don't take the time to do. Even good movies don't take the time to do.
That is an excellent choice.
So that's mine. Excalibur, 1981.
What are we on? Number 7? I know we only count from 10 to 1, but I tend to lose track.
Did we lose you,
sometimes.
Josh?
No, I'm. Can you not hear me?
Yeah, we did lose you. I see your light flashing.
Am I back?
And nope, you're still Got your circle flashing, but nothing going on there.
Well, that's unusual.
You know what? I obviously we're having some technical difficulties,
A
so
little bit,
I
a little
am
bit.
going to tell you what my number 6 is, and then we'll let Josh catch up. Um, my number 6 is a movie called The Headhunter. I don't know how many people have seen this movie, but I actually picked it up off of Shudder, which is one of my favorite streaming services because it's all horror all the time. It's actually a subsidiary of AMC. It's actually fabulous. So I was watching this movie called The Headhunter, and I realized how much the costuming mattered. Um, it's gritty. It's dark as heck. And I don't mean dark like the movie is dark lighting wise. I mean like it's really dark thematically. But every aspect of Headhunter's costuming for all of the people gives itself
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
a kind of fantasy-esque world, but it also is scary as heck. It's unique, and I feel like that also is a costuming challenge when things are, here we've got a special world, and now we have to create a unique look for it. Even the textures of what they wear are sort of different from other. There's a lot of strips that they use. It's just all very excellent. So my number 7 is The Headhunter, and I think I want to say that The Headhunter came out in 2018, but I'm not super sure. Let's see. It is 2018. So,
Okay, I've
did
never
we
heard
get
of that.
Josh fixed? Josh, are you fixed?
I, well,
Nope,
my voice is
I'm
coming
not
through on
hearing you
the
still.
broadcast.
Is this me?
Yeah, it might be you.
Okay.
It might be you.
Well, I've said all of my stuff, so I'm going to let you say your stuff, and I will see if I can fix. Maybe it's mine.
Okay. You can't hear that. Um, we'll go to my number 7. My number 7 is from 2015, directed by George Miller, Mad Max Fury Road. It is. Can you hear me?
I can now.
Excellent. Okay, I was just saying that my number
I got
7
it.
is
Mad
Mad Max
Max.
Fury Road.
Nice.
There were a number of Mad Max movies to choose from, of course, but this one in particular, from Furiosa's, war paint to the I have my notes over here. Immortan Joe and the way he just has armor that glistens in the
It's so creepy.
post-apocalypse. Weird, yet very weird. Pale skin, long hair, the tubes. It is everything you could want and more when it comes to creating colorful characters in a barren world. Because you don't have a ton of set designers that have room to play around and make every inch of the frame interesting to look at. A lot of the time, it's just miles of miles and miles. So the contrasting styles have to come through the wardrobe, from the wives to Mad Max himself to all of the members of the gang. I guess I would bet the gang's a good word for it.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
You're talking about the War Boys, right? And
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the yeah, right. Yeah, and even the people from the Bullet Farm with their suit kind of weird things going on.
Everybody's got a distinct look, and with a distinct look, you get layers. You get layers of personality, and each character, from the most main to the lowest, smallest part on set, has distinguishable features that makes it look like any single one of them could be pulled aside and given their own story.
Yeah.
That's how good the costumes were with Mad Max Fury Road. And that's one of the reasons why I'm excited to see the Furiosa spinoff when, it eventually comes out. Not so much because I'm enamored with the character, and no, I'm not going to say it's because I love the clothes, but because it just seems to me like the the layers of depth when it comes to each individual is so great. I could just watch characters in this world forever and love every second of it. And that's
I
why it was my
totally
number
agree.
7.
I would love to know who trains all of these people. Like, who trains the polecats? How did, like, what's that look like?
Where did he get the guitar?
Where did he get the guitar? Dude, I love that.
So that was my number 7, and you did too. So I'm gonna do 2.
Yeah.
My number 6 is one that is not most known for just the clothes that the characters wear, but it does play an important role in the story. That's right, the clothes play an important role in this story. 1978, directed by Randall Kleiser. It is Grease.
Oh, hey, that's
You
an interesting choice.
you weren't going to get away without getting a musical from me. I made sure of that. And Grease is one of the musicals. Like I said, wardrobe is super important. Whether you're one of the T-Birds or one of the Pink Ladies, you knew who you were in Grease. Everybody, like I said at the top, the clothes are the reflection of the people that wear them. This, especially in film, you get to know somebody so quickly as soon as they walk on screen just by what they're wearing. Sandy, clean cut, nice hair, pretty dress. Uh, the Pink Ladies, pink jackets, capris. They're the hip chicks. Uh, the guys, with the leather jackets and jeans, greased back hair. It's all part and parcel to uh, telling the story of this particular moment in time in America, right? And the reason why it really breaks down, the reason why Grease wound up being on this list and not, say, The Sound of Music, is because the whole finale, even though I disagree wholeheartedly with the premise, it all comes down to each one of them making changes to themselves, which is reflected through their wardrobe. Sandy going to the, tight black clothes, Danny with his, Letterman's jacket, each one of them trying to say that they would be willing to change for the other. Of course, I guess Danny won out in the end because he was like, you know what? We're going with that look. So yeah, the entire finale is built around a wardrobe change. And it's one of the few times I can think of this actually happening. And that's why I had to put it at my number 6.
Good choice.
Hopefully, it made some people think out there like, he's right.
We can only hope. We can only hope.
What? Well, we're breaking into the top 5. I wish we had a sound effect or something for we're in the top 5. Something that could
Yeah, we need
make a
like a
moment out
sound
of it.
of glass crashing or something, like, or something like that. I don't know.
Busting through the other side. So,
Um,
number 5, what is your number 5, Jen?
my number 5 is actually a movie that most people know about and have probably seen, and I love for all of its practical effects, which
Is it
means
Troll
that there's
2?
a lot of costuming. No, although that was actually an interesting movie. It's got a lot of practical effects, which means that a lot of the costuming is very, let's just say, super personal to the characters.
Okay.
In and and also one of the reasons also that I love this movie is because it does kind of like it's got a variety of different costuming choices that range from the fantastical to the very well ordered and hey, I know that you're from the FBI because you dress like you're an FBI agent. It is the 2004 movie called Hellboy.
Okay.
And Hellboy, to me, first of all, Hellboy's costume is amazing. I mean, forget not I mean not forget, but just set aside the story for a second and just think about how amazing and how iconic that particular costume is, and how you immediately recognize it. It's like no other. I mean, obviously there's makeup and stuff like that, but all of the prosthetics that they give him to wear are just insanely well done. But then you also have the, I dare I say, the average person. I mean, I'm sure they would probably argue that they're not average at all. But you know, um even well, I guess everybody really, even Trevor, even John, um just sort of like everyone has their own their whatever their costume is sort of like, it's not just their profession, it's the role that they play in the story. The one notable exception might be Liz, because although Liz is kind of gothy and yeah, maybe her costume choices say that, I feel like Liz is sort of a transitory character that takes us between worlds, and so her costume choices tend to be a little bit more fluid. But everybody else has very specific uh, roles that they play. And Tom Manning, the character that is like so iconic for being like, oh my god, you're gonna give me a heart attack or whatever. Like he's always trying to hide everything. Um, his his suits. I don't know if you've seen them, but his suits are so perfectly tailored that it's like, man, these are good suits. They look good on him. He looks so established. Um, so aside from Abe and Hellboy and Liz, we get all of the cast of regulars that sort of look like, yeah, this is where they belong. And then we move into all of the other, you know, character pieces with Ilsa and what's the other, what was that other character's name? The Rasputin character, and they all end up looking like they just stepped right out of post World War II. It's super cool. Everything about Hellboy is really fun from the costuming standpoint, so that's why it made my number 5.
It's a very eerie movie, and the costumes are on the spectacular side. Hey,
Love
I've
it.
seen one of your movies.
Hey, that's so exciting. You have to go, speaking of that, you have to go and watch the number 6 called The Headhunter. It's shorter than most movies, and it's really good to watch in spooky season. I think you might really like it.
I'm gonna take a quick pause here to let you know. Last week we talked about spooky season movies,
We did.
movies to watch on Halloween, and I did my homework. I watched Hellraiser.
Oh, and what did you think?
Gosh, my opinion of this movie is, I'm going to say it's a mixed bag, to be perfectly honest, because
Which Hellraiser did you watch?
the original.
Okay, so you didn't watch the remake. Okay.
Now, I
Okay.
was going to, but then I thought probably not a good idea now that all the kids are awake.
Hmm.
I know I could do homework and see, should I watch this with my kids in the room? But I just decided to err on the side of caution. I get up early in the morning, especially on the weekend, so kids are asleep, and I can basically watch whatever I want. But it combined some of the more cheesier acting of the 70s as far as some of the main characters go, the ones that weren't um, demon affiliated,
Hmm.
and combine that with some of the best special effects I've ever seen, practical effects in a horror movie. It was amazeballs to look at.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, okay, okay. On the one hand, it's like, okay, it's kind of cheesy. I dig it. I like, watching this kind of stuff. But then once, everything starts happening, you're like, oh,
No, no.
that's in this movie? And it became quite the spectacle. Especially, I had to do a little bit of a deep dive afterwards and find out about some of the things that were removed, for to get its rating. I was like, I mean, it's already a crazy R, right? What could they possibly remove? Oh, there was a lot more to this.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, I see you, Hellraiser. And it kind of made me worried about, considering the subject matter, what they could possibly do to bring more to the table in a remake. So it's
Uh,
another reason I haven't watched it yet.
Although, just for everybody and for you, Josh, the remake, although it is fairly authentic to the old one, and I say authentic meaning like it tracks on really the best of what made Hellraiser the original as good as it was. Um, but it ups the stakes and makes it quite a bit better without a lot of the creepy sexual overtones, which I think sometimes can actually get in the way. Sometimes it works, but so I don't know. In this particular, in the original, it worked because of who Frank was. In the remake, we have replaced lust for greed. And so there is a brand new sort of subset of desire happening. It's the desire for greed, and everything kind of rolls around that, making, I think, the movie a bit more palatable to maybe people who were sort of turned off from the original. Also, the acting in this is just absolutely stellar. There is not a single that I can think of, not a single scene that feels like it is out of place or wasted screen time. Everything just feels great. So I mean, I give the remake actually a higher score than I give the original.
Really?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
Yes, I do.
okay. And for those of you wondering, like I said, I don't use cheesy as a synonym for bad. Um, it did seem to be like on this precipice of an old versus new school approach to horror. Um, but I'm no expert on horror movies by any stretch of the imagination. That was just my impression. It was kind of a step into the what will be the things that happen after it.
Right. And I mean, the original Hellraiser is sort of an old school well, it feels old school in in what it brings to the table. I think I can safely say that Hellraiser, the reboot, does not even come close to the level of sort of ingenious effects that were in the first one. They're different, but the story is so much more compelling on several different levels. You really are invested in who the characters are and what may or may not happen to them. So I definitely highly suggest it.
There were many times I was watching the original and I'm like, how do they do that without CG?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's what makes it even more astounding is that, is that the effects that they were using then don't hold a candle to the spectrum of effects that we have available to us today. And yet at the same time, the remake also again does a fairly good uh callback to making most things feel very practical in their effects. It's really not a lot of over the top CGI, which is where a lot of the other Hellraisers, as we move on down the line, started to go with sort of crazy special effects as if like that's going to be more scary. And I feel like they came full circle back to the original. No, what really makes this scary is the story of who the Cenobites are and how it is that our interaction with them and how we misunderstand our interaction with them makes things so creepy and crazy. So
I guess
it's free on Hulu right now.
I definitely look forward to watching the remake as soon as I find time to pencil that in. I don't want to make it my homework just yet, but it's on my to do list.
Well, I'm excited that you even got to see the first one. You'll have a great frame of reference or a great point of reference to go back to when you see the remake, and we'll have to discuss whether you think it's good or not.
Yeah, and then I read there were 10 more. Like, oh,
Yeah, we'll have a we'll have a chat about that sometime. I'll tell you which ones are worth watching and which ones aren't.
but speaking of worth watching, we'll get to my number 5. Another movie I've mentioned on this show before, 1985, directed by Richard Donner. It's The Goonies.
Oh,
I know. Some of you out there are like, there's nothing outlandish about their wardrobe, and that's the point. Because these are just kids. More importantly, these are just kids in the 80s. We're talking jean jackets, military surplus coats, windbreakers, sweatbands, sweatpants, um, Letterman jackets. It's a snapshot into what kids were like in the 80s, and that's what they needed to do. Everything that they wear, as I keep mentioning throughout this episode, reflects something about them. Chunk, he's got the floral Hawaiian shirt on. At the top, I said, big fat party animal. Don't feel comfortable calling Chunk a big fat party animal, but he is, one of the more eccentric of the group. He's sort of an outsider of the outsiders. And his wardrobe reflects that because it's far different than everybody else. You got Mouth, is wearing the cool denim jacket with the white shirt, layered up in a very John Hughes style, cool looking hair, and yeah, he's the smart aleck of the group. Mikey, he's just kind of he's there, nothing super noticeable about what he's wearing. It's just he's the average guy in the group, and of course, Data. Everything about him, for multiple pockets. He's got to have room for all of his gadgets. It reflects exactly who he is, and that's just the main, the main 4 Goonies. Then you start bringing in Brand and the Fratellis. You start bringing all these other characters, Andy, Steph, Sloth, the Superman shirt. Beautiful, because I'm not going to say it's what inspires him to help, because Chunk, being kind of a personable kid and willing to he knows what it's like being, like I said, the outsider of the outsiders. So he meets another outsider, and they kind of hit it off. But the fact that Sloth is wearing the heroic shirt, and it eventually reflects how he wants to help people that really can't help themselves, makes that a great choice. And yes, Richard Donner did direct those Superman movies, and yes, we did get that musical cue when Sloth shows up.
Mhm.
But sometimes average is exactly what's needed, because, as we mentioned before, good stories tend to revolve around average people put in, or should I say, ordinary people put into extraordinary situations. And that's exactly what the Goonies is. Just these regular kids that are losing their homes, giving one last shot at saving everything by finding a dead pirate's treasure. And that is why the Goonies made my number 5.
Nice. Um, my number 4 is a movie that I also saw in theaters a long time ago. Actually brought my kid to see it. Um, and it is one of the first movies that I thought, oh my god, you guys do Dracula so perfect. Um, and it sort of surprises me that this particular type of Dracula is not really like more the standard, because I feel like he's just so perfect. Um, this is the Van Helsing movie that was released in 2004. It stars, oh God, I don't know why I always want to call him Logan. Stars Hugh Jackman, and um, th- there's something so fun about this movie, but costuming choices. The, I don't know how or what kind of creative genius came up with the Frankenstein monsters garb, but it was so perfect. It was so stunning. I really, really, really liked it. And about the only thing that I liked more than that and just below Dracula is Dracula's Wives. Dracula's Wives, where this crazy, loose fitting, flowy sort of outfits that, first of all, they glide when they walk, which is just it's just such a great idea. But secondly, when they change into like their flying forms, when they look more bat-ish, um, the clothing itself kind of becomes the wings, the leathered part of the wing, and it's amazing because somebody, you could tell that somebody really thought about what that transition would look like. And that was, I just loved it. It was just so perfect. I mean, Van Helsing's outfit is kind of like, it feels a little bit standard. It's good. Um, but it's not like, there's nothing super special about it. It makes him recognizable. But then if you look around at the villagers, man, you can tell that these villagers are poor just by looking at what they're wearing. Nobody is wearing anything that's very colorful. Everybody's wearing stuff that looks like it's been well worn. It's super cool to see that piece. I really liked it a lot. Um, and then the other thing that I really loved about this, just in terms um, of sort of like what is involved, is uh, Anna, and that's she's played by Kate Beckinsale. Anna's outfits are sort of like they I don't know, they look so perfect on her and they tell a story all by themselves. They tell a story of a very self-sufficient woman, but they also tell the story of someone who has privilege, someone who is a little bit like there's more to her than meets the eye. And you kind of get that the moment that you see her on screen because of what she's wearing. She really just makes an entrance and stands out. So that fits my number 4 spot. I really, really, really love this movie for all of its amazing costuming.
I wish I'd seen it.
And who played Dracula? Dracula was played by Richard Roxburgh. That's who played him. And oh my god, he was the most perfect Dracula. Just first of all, he was suave. That's like a big thing. But secondly, and this is just movie stuff. This isn't his costuming. His costuming was also epic because the Dracula costume was just like it wasn't like Vlad. It wasn't pop collar, but it was you could tell that he was Dracula. And the character was so snarky and perfectly Dracula that I feel like that should be the standard of Dracula as we move forward in any vampire movie. So there you go. Van Helsing.
Van Helsing is your number
4.
4? Okay, then I guess it's my number 4 time. And surprise, there's another appearance by Corey Feldman. Crazy, right?
No. Although, like, trying to think of something that Corey Feldman was costumed in that was interesting other than Goonies.
1990.
Having a hard time.
I will say his face did not appear in the movie, but his voice did. In 1990, directed by Steve Barron, Corey Feldman played Donatello in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Ah.
Now, for me, this is a very personal choice because it was one of the first times that I'd seen a property that I love so much be adapted for the big screen in live action, no less. And I will say that between this and the second movie, they have yet to match the magic of the costumes, especially for the turtles. Since the CGI, it's not really my my cup of tea. Got to be honest. Sorry, Michael Bay, but this 1990 film nailed the aesthetic of the turtles. It had costumes, outfits for the performers that were so well designed that they could do all of the flips and the kicks and the cartwheels fairly simply. In the second one, from what I understand, they were designed a little bit better, made it a little more possible, lighter to wear, but that just doesn't have the feel of the first one. Splinter looks amazing, and I know we're kind of leaning into puppet territory here, but I'm counting this. One, Shredder looks amazing and menacing and shiny and sharp. Looks like a giant can opener, and it works so unbelievably well for the character. Casey Jones, he's just this dude that wears a hockey mask, right? Has a golf bag strapped to his back with a bunch of other assorted sports-related weaponry. Easily able to make it look incredibly goofy, but they make the aesthetic work so well in this. I'm not going to say gritty, but it has that New York grain
Mhm.
it, and that makes Casey Jones' aesthetic uh, work for me. Cricket, you got to know what a crumpet is to understand cricket. Infinitely quotable. April with the little jumpers she wears, and finally, in what could have been the biggest gaffe of all time for wardrobe, they and crush absolutely the Foot Clan. It could have been so easy to make some real cheap knockoffs of the costumes from the cartoon with a little drapey, fabric around the shoulders and loose fitting masks. But no, they went full freaking ninja by making everything very tight fitting, and the headbands giving it a little bit of a backstory of itself by having it be something that you earned. You have to fight your way into the foot. The wardrobe was a reward for being good enough. So having that little extra flavor just as something that the henchmen are wearing was an amazing touch, in my opinion, and that's why it is my number 4.
Nice. My kid loved Ninja Turtles, like a lot. I was not as super impressed, but I see why it's a good costuming choice. I definitely see that. Okay, my number 3 movie is actually a fairly recent movie. It was filmed in 2020, and I feel I went back and forth on this because a movie by the same exact director who had the same exact vision basically for the movie. Um, I almost chose that one because I also feel like it was similarly well designed in terms of costume. But I went with The Northman from 2020. Uh, with it was directed by Robert Eggers, and it stars Alexander Skarsgård. Now, there's a lot of imagery from The Northman where Alexander Skarsgård isn't wearing very much at all, and trust me, I love those scenes. It's wonderful. I'm not taking anything away from that. But the scenes where they are in the hall, the scenes where we have many Vikings at war or on raiding parties, I should say, and they are decimating villages. They're amazing. They There is a kind of authenticity to this that feels as gritty as the movie. Now, I won't get into whether I like the movie or not because it's really complicated. Um, there's so much going on here, and there are elements and aspects of the Northman which are absolutely phenomenal, and then there are some where I feel like I don't know what he was thinking. But that's for another day. The costuming choices work so well here, not so much because they are 100% authentic to the time, but more because they fit the narrative perfectly. They make us not only know, as we have said in most of our other movies, who is supposed to be who, but they also give us this sense of who the right people are and who the wrong people are. And I kind of loved that because sometimes it feels like when we're especially when we're watching historical movies that we can sort of get carried away with the grandeur of costuming, and it sort of like it takes your breath away because, and actually the number 2 on my list is going to do that. It takes your breath away because it's just so gorgeous. But in Northman, yeah, nobody's costume is specifically gorgeous as much as it is perfectly fitting for each individual scene, each individual um, period that they're in. It's just really, I think, intelligently designed. And it's very identifiable. When you see a scene from Northman, you can really tell based on the costumes who the people were in the movie. Like you really get a good sense of, oh yeah, I remember this because look at the way they're dressed. They all have this sort of same thematic pattern. So I really, really loved the costuming choices in the Northman.
You know, of all the things I've heard about that movie, excellent wardrobe has not been one of them.
It's funny, and you know, there's an understatement to. Let me put it to you this way: it takes a lot of work to make something look old when everything that we have is brand new. I mean, you have to weather clothing in order to make it look tattered without falling apart on the actors. Um, and specifically, of course, the kind of filtered shots that he uses required them definitely to pay attention to textures and colors. But the grittiness of everything and the muted aspect of the movie itself required the costuming department to put an enormous amount of effort into making people look incredibly not just downtrodden, but like, okay, you have nothing. How do you portray that without, like without making it look ridiculous? And somehow they did that. It really did work. And Alexander Skarsgård's character definitely goes through a transformation. But even the middle parts where he has like his imaginary battle with the guardian of the sword, even that costume, it's freaky and scary as heck, but it's like perfectly Viking. It absolutely works. And I think a lot about how much design choice goes into minimalism as much as how much design choice goes into the maximal ideology of costume design. So that's why this one gets a top pick here.
Excellent reasoning, sound logic all the way around.
So we are at your number 3.
My number 3. I couldn't have a complete list without including Spielberg.
Oh.
Because if there was ever a director that pays attention to every frame of film that he puts on screen, Spielberg's one of them. And in 1991, he gave us Hook.
Oh, you like that movie, don't you?
I love that movie.
That was on your list from before.
This there are quite a few repeats on this list, and Hook is probably the hookiest. What do you take when you take Peter Pan out of Neverland, make him grow up, be a lawyer, becoming a soulless corporate sellout? Well, you get a guy that likes to dress in nice suits, and go to children's plays and talk on a cell phone, a little pretentious. Looks very dapper, that Robin Williams guy. And then you remove him from that and send him back to Neverland, where he shows up raggedy because he's worried that his children are missing. But he winds up in a conclave of pirates who are a ragtag group. Nothing super special. Wearing, as we've mentioned before, like loose leaf clothing, just pirate stuff, But then you see the upper crust of the pirate society, where you have Captain Hook, with his garish shirts, the fluffy stuff, you know, the gold trim hats with the exuberant feathers. And you see sort of an unwanted connection between Pan and Hook for the first time. That Peter's kind of, as Wendy puts it, become a pirate, just with a slightly different wardrobe, although still wanting to look better than others. And it's not until that he gets found again by the Lost Boys that he learns that you got to strip away all that and find your inner child again to be able to fly, to be able to crow, to be able to bangarang.
Mhm.
And the Lost Boys themselves have a wardrobe that is, entirely made up of just things that they find because they're making do. They're kids. And what they lack, they make up for in imagination, especially when it comes time to eat. Tink,
Nice.
losing the traditional green garb and traded for a nice brown ensemble to fit in with the rest of the Lost Boys, I thought was a nice touch. And Peter going back to the green spandex to finally take on Captain Hook one last time. It is all a wonderful look at how clothes can represent who we are, not only in society but also in the duality of good versus evil. And we see that a little bit after Hook tries to dress Peter's kids as him. Peter's son Jack sort of takes to the upper class pirate garb a little bit better than his daughter, but it reflects that he's finally finding a father figure to latch on to because Peter's just been kind of absent. And the last thing I'm going to say about Hook, the battle scene, the weird armors, the the helmets, the weaponry that all of the Lost Boys implore. I wanted them all so bad as a kid. I wanted to be dressed just like them when you walk through the like little bamboo sheet and suddenly, bam, you're armored, you're good. Hook took a lot of time to pay painstaking attention to how everybody looks and tell a wonderful story about growing up, losing who you are, and then coming home again. And I will say, there is one more thing. I love Smee. Smee's the best. And that's why Hook is my number 3.
Did you know that Glenn Close was in Hook?
Glenn Close in Hook?
Yeah. She was the pirate that they put in the boo box. Apparently she just stopped by the set one day to say hi to Robin Williams, and they talked her into being the pirate that they put into the punishment box, the boo box. And yeah, that's her.
I had no
You'd
idea.
never guess.
I had no idea.
So yeah, thanks, Glenn Close. That was really awesome. Okay. So we are at number 2.
Number 2.
And okay. Is it, this is hard because number 2 is actually it's on my top 10 movies of all time. And I always feel like I should switch this around because I love this movie so much, but I do love the costuming of my number 1 more than I like the costuming of my actual very favorite movie. This movie is God, when I saw this movie, I was blown away. I was blown away so much that I had to, the very next day, go and get the DVD for it. Well, I shouldn't say the very next day, the moment that it was on sale. I feel like this movie is a visual treat for every sense. Um, it's stunning in every way, but the costuming choice for this movie really gives it depth. Um, and it's almost so subtle that sometimes it it feels unintentional, but it definitely is not. This is the 2002 movie called Hero. It starred Jet Li. It What is a good way to describe why the costuming in Hero is so good, other than to say part of the extension of martial arts in Hero is the body's ability to do fantastical things. And by extension, every costuming choice in Hero is meant to either exaggerate that or pronounce it in some way to give us a level of this is so important because here's how the characters get to express who they really are, what they're really doing, just the intent of where they are in that moment is exemplified by what they're wearing. Um, there, as a movie, costuming choices for this movie make all the difference because there are huge battle scenes. I mean, like massive amounts of people. And then there are very close, intimate scenes that are no less important, and the uniformity of how people are dressed matters. It's like they're all statements in and of themselves. Um, there's so much that I could say about Hero as a movie. I mean, it's one of my favorite movies for a very good reason. It's the storyteller's story within a story that makes it so impactful and makes it work, but it's also this ultimate sort of decision philosophy making that the king has to come to at the very end that is it's difficult. It's so difficult. And and I mean I could almost say that even the weapons that they choose to arm everyone with by extension of their costuming are like everything has a certain factor to it. Everything has blade handles match perfectly costuming choices. The archers have a very specific look. Everything, it's just a perfect sort of match that's stunning. So, I mean, I could wax poetic about Hero forever and ever, but as a movie with excellent costuming, it definitely deserves that number 2 spot. And I don't know why we're not saying who did the costuming, but the design, um, I, and you know what? I totally forgot her name. Um, but the costume designer is someone who would then go on to work on some other super fit. Emmy Wada, WADA. She actually died in 2021.
No.
Um, she and I mean, truly, her eye for detail was just absolutely stunning, just stunning. So, thank you so much, Emmy.
Well, fun fact, I had every intention of talking about the wardrobers and the costumers by name, but I sort of ran out of time getting
Oops,
my list.
sorry.
Um, I had a few of them pulled up, ready to go, but
While
as the
while
show's
while
rolling,
we're while we're in the top two, let's just give a quick shout out to the best costumer in movies ever,
is it me?
Edna Mode.
Okay,
It's
no
very
cares.
rare that we actually have a costume design, kind of like in She-Hulk. It's very rare that we actually get to sort of meta meet the costume designers. So, gotta call it out when we can.
That's super fair.
Okay, so you're number two.
My number two. Believe it or not, I had the same situation you did, where this is one of my all-time favorite movies, and for all intents and purposes, it should be probably number one on my list. But I had to make the same choice you did and bump it to the number two spot because my number one movie has the better costumes. It
Hmm.
it just goes without saying. And fun fact, my number two movie is a number two movie. Yeah, got you thinking, don't I? Well, if anybody knows me at all, you knew that something from this series was gonna pop up at some point. But I'm talking about, in this particular instance, 1989's Back to the Future Part 2,
Hmm.
directed by Robert Zemeckis. Now, Back to the Future is probably my favorite movie of all time. Back to the Future Part 2, it hangs right up there with it as a film that I absolutely adore. It's just a really big shame that Future Day has come and gone. That the furthest point in the future in Back to the Future is now 7 years in the past. If that doesn't make me feel old, I don't know what will. But the original Back to the Future had a wonderful array of costumes dedicated to the 80s. It was in the 80s, so I guess it makes sense that they just went shopping for clothes, sure. But Marty, he had a good fashion sense. But when they went to the 50s, it really shines with the wardrobe there. See, I can talk about this because in Back to the Future Part 2, they start out in the 80s where Marty's 80s fashion sense is on full display. But then they go to the future, and that's what really made me sit up and take notice of wardrobe when they try to figure out what will the future be like. Apparently, a lot of plastic. I guess technically they weren't wrong. From changing Marty's iconic life jacket look to the futuristic red jacket that kind of has a similar vibe to what he wore in the original movie. The self uh, fitting shoes, which are a real thing now, not necessarily in a wide market release, but they exist, and that's all that matters. Jeans, who knew that 7 years ago, having your pockets inside out was going to be the height of fashion, as well as really weird colored hats. And we're not quite there yet, but I know we are very close to the HUD glasses that Donk likes to wear, having all of that information on display on your face. We have things like it, but not quite to the degree they were doing them in Back to the Future Part 2. Having an old man Biff. We talked about, I don't remember if we were on the air or not when we talked about this, but that idea that people don't really lose their sense of fashion. It's just the fashion changes, but they don't. With Old Man Biff, he's still kind of dressing like he did when he was a teenager. Just like I said, now that he's an old man, it's considered old man clothes. Having button up shirt and the slacks. But his grandkids, or his grandkid, was it Griff? Really menacing looking guy with his little robot parts added, looking taller. It was quite the scene. But not only does the wardrobe department have to dress for the 80s, not only does it have to dress for 2015, but no, they had to go full circle and bring it back to 1955, where not only did we catch all of those great 50s costumes, especially from the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, but we got to see Marty in what he thought was sort of a spy garb, in the all black ensemble with a little hat. He felt very clever for buying these inconspicuous clothes, and really, it fooled nobody. He was never really inconspicuous at all. But wardrobe humor uh, is, I think, a good sign of a movie that has a good wardrobe department. So I tip my black little hat to Gala Autumn. Yeah, I gave a name. So hats off to you. You did a great job with Back to the Future Part 2. The costuming is one of the many reasons why I love that movie so much. Exquisite work. Back to the Future Part 2 was my number 2.
Okay. Well, as as a as a number one, um this movie I feel like probably would end up on a lot of lists as some of the best costume design that's around. One, because it is intensely difficult to make pieces that work this way, um, from a time that's gone and not forgotten, but it's still, there's a lot that went into this, and there's so many people to costume, because the entire movie is set around a specific period in time. um, it was 2000, and I think it was actually 2004 when this movie came out. Memoirs of a Geisha. Um, Colleen Atwood actually won an Oscar for her costume design in Memoirs of a Geisha, and the the story is hard to watch. For me, it is, because I don't know. There's something both repressive and stifling about it at the same time that it's like just in a breathtaking story. But the costuming, I don't even, to be honest, I don't know how authentic the costuming is. I just know that it is beautiful, and that some of the, sans even the makeup, which is a huge part of the actual, the look, the wigs, um the flowiness of the fabric in just exactly the right spots while accentuating the body in different spots, that requires a kind of tailoring that feels so time consuming, and it's got to be a work of love. I don't see any way that you could possibly look at Memoirs of a Geisha from a costuming standpoint and not think someone loved this project. It truly is mesmerizing. And it's not just the women. The men have a very specific look that it puts them in that moment in history, but it also, the angles of their clothing gives them a kind of sharp severity. There's nothing soft about anything that they wear. Um, it even from character to character, there are some really amazing pieces of you can tell when a person is a little bit more on the good side than not. You can tell who's got money and who doesn't. I mean, all of the normal stuff that I think that we would be able to pick up on, and somehow there is this exaggerated beauty of the scenes when they are dressed in sort of full regalia. And it's absolutely stunning. The colors in the fabric alone, I have no idea where she got uh, this, where she got access to this kind of cloth, because it you can tell that the cloth itself is special. It's not just a print of something. There are silks involved here. There are, um, and then there's the undergarments, which you can see are like, it just feels so real. And I think that to me is sort of like, it's a costuming conundrum that you can't call too much attention to the costuming that it becomes the entire movie, but it has to complement the movie in a way that makes everything else fall together. And while the clothing can tell a story all by itself, that story can never eclipse the main narrative. And that's an art that is, I think, in some ways very underappreciated. I do think that we appreciate the more lavish. Um, and we definitely appreciate, the kind of like prosthetic designs like Hellboy, like World of Warcraft. I mean, we definitely have that sort of like, yeah, we appreciate that. But when it comes to the more subtle choices, this really feels like an underappreciated art. And it gets Academy Awards for a reason. Even the industry recognizes it. But as humble viewers, sometimes I think that we forget how to enjoy the movie on that level. So, my number one choice, along with my short number one spiel, is Memoirs of a Geisha, which I believe was released in 2004.
2004 sounds about right.
I'm pretty sure because she won the Oscar for it in 2005, so it would stand to reason that it was released in 2004.
Yeah, that tracks. Yeah, excellent choice there.
Thank you. I really love that movie too. It's complicated. That's a complicated movie to watch. Oof.
I guess it's my turn for a number one
It
pick.
is your turn. Well, I can't wait to hear what is your number one.
Mine's going to be a little bit out there, but
Out
it's
there in space?
no, and I think that's why. Um, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and get to this. I teased it earlier about the omissions on my list because my number one. Some of you might be listening, going, "I know what it is. It's a Marvel movie." Nope, not one Marvel movie, not one DC movie, no superhero movies. Ninja Turtles doesn't count as superheroes, but no superhero movies on my list. And I love
I
those things.
I had that same feeling. I honestly, I had the same feeling. I didn't feel, although I love the costuming choices
Hmm.
for a lot of superhero movies, I didn't feel like, I feel like the superhero and the costume are kind of one in the same, and that we don't go out of our way to make all of the other costuming choices in those movies spectacular, because we're not spectacular. Only the superheroes are. And so the costuming becomes a little bit blasé. Like, not for the superhero, but for everybody else. So it just doesn't shine and stand out?
Exactly. And that's why I totally steered clear of the MCU. Although they could do a whole special on the MCU and the evolution of Captain America's costume throughout, and all of the subtle hints that they give to his character. And, it's good stuff, but like you said, for me, it's low hanging fruit.
Yeah, it feels
It's
kind of
eas-
mundane.
it seems easy to say. Wonder Woman's costume looks fantastic. Just look at it. Meh. But my number one is probably the oldest movie I've ever talked about on this
Hmm.
show because it comes all the way from 1939,
Oh, I'm intrigued.
directed by Victor Fleming. It is, of course, The Wizard of Oz.
Ah.
Everything about this, costuming wise, is straight iconic. From Dorothy's little blue dress, even in black and white, it just pops. Red ruby slippers, the costumes of the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion, the Wicked Witch of the West, Glinda, the Munchkins, everybody in the Emerald City. Every costume is made to pop and seem larger than life, especially on a color screen, especially in 19 freaking 39. One of the things that I think a lot of designers get wrong whenever they try to retell the story is make, say, the Cowardly Lion almost too liony, right? Or the Tin Man, he's too too robotic. The Scarecrow, too. They lean into the characters as they are in Oz, but they don't remember it that the whole point, the whole question of whether or not it was a dream comes from the fact that it's supposed to be the people in her life are supposed to be recognizable in these characters. That's why they look like costumes. That's why it works because you know who they are outside of the costumes on the farm. So when it gets to the point of the end where Dorothy's saying, "And you were there, you were there, you were there," it makes complete sense. I can't think of another single movie where virtually every character on screen is instantly identifiable, if not by their role, but by their place in Oz. You know who the members of the Lollipop Guild are. You know who the coroner is. You know who the guy at the door is because their costumes are key components to telling this story.
Right.
And without hesitation, when I thought of this topic, The Wizard of Oz was instantly the first thing that came to mind. And through an entire week of pruning what became a pretty good sized list, this was basically the only constant. My number one, it was always going to be my number one. And I honestly can't imagine anything else taking it away at this point in time. As far as those costumes, amazing. Best ever. And that
Nice.
is why The Wizard of Oz is my number one choice on this list.
Awesome.
We did it.
Well,
We did it.
I am gonna go through my top 10, but I want to set the stage for next week. Um, Next week we are going to make
Cupcakes.
well, yeah, we could also make cupcakes.
Nice.
In fact, over the weekend we made vampire cupcakes.
Ooh, do they suck?
They don't suck. You can
Okay.
no, I won't say it. I won't say it that way. We used these oversized cupcake tins, and we filled the cupcakes with cherry filling, like from pie filling,
Mhm.
and then made the little vampire fang marks over the top with we have our white icing and then our blood that comes down, so it looks like someone's taken a bite into the cupcake, and then when you take a bite into the cupcake, ta-da, you get a whole bunch of blood filling that tastes remarkably like cherry pie. It's very delicious. We
Oh,
had a
that
lot of fun making those.
sounds like it would give me diabetes, and I love it.
They're just so good. They're really good. We made them actually for Interview with a Vampire, because that is on AMC right now. We're having a lot of fun with that. Okay, so next week we are going to count down our top 10 movies. Now, there's a caveat with this, so hear me out. Our top 10 movies featuring creatures. But the caveat is the creatures have to be completely and totally non-human, meaning no werewolves, no Frankenstein, because technically he's human. So it's got to be creatures, like other realm creatures, completely mythic creatures, or creatures that don't have any sort of like you look like a person. Uh, that's the assignment. Should be interesting, because there's a lot of monster movies out there, but damn, we love to make monster movies about people. Apparently, we're not really all that convinced we're good, or the duality of man. I don't know. So, is that clear?
I think so. In fact, I'm pretty sure what's one that's already in my top 5.
So, yeah, and I mean, like I said, monster movies abound everywhere. There's so many of them. Just make sure that they are not people that either morph or whatever. Okay, so top 10. 10, Warcraft. 9, A Man for All Seasons, 1966. 8, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. 7, Excalibur. 6, The Headhunter. That's on Shudder, by the way. 5, Hellboy. 4, Van Helsing. 3, The Northman. 2, Hero. And 1, Memoirs of a Geisha. So let's hear your top 10 rundown.
My top 10 goes as such. Number 10, basketball. Number 9, Mom and Dad Save the World. Number 8, Gangs of New York. Number 7, Mad Max Fury Road. Number 6, Grease. Number 5, The Goonies. Number 4, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Number 3, Hook. Number 2, Back to the Future Part 2. And number 1, The Wizard of Oz. Jen, the reason I chuckled in the middle of my list is because I thought of your list and I thought of my list, and I thought if somebody made a list of these movies without putting some sort of connective tissue and asked, why were these on the same list? I couldn't imagine the answers people would come up with.
Yeah. Well, mine maybe, because they do all have historical themes kind of attached to them. Like, yeah, they all have, some historical sort of like throwback. Even Warcraft has knights.
Look at mine and
But
say,
you'd be wrong. But you'd be totally wrong. So,
I don't know. Do they all sync up to Dark Side of the Moon?
no. Actually, no.
No, they don't. Well, Jen, I know you love to cultivate and create recipes when it comes to movies. Tell us about moviesandmeals.com.
So, I'm still behind in my posting, but still much more to come. Moviesandmeals.com is where we create all kinds of different variations of dishes or snacks and ideas to eat with your TV shows, movies, various entertainments. Um, we're about to do next week, I believe, our Game of Thrones House of the Dragon theme night. We did a Game of Thrones theme night many years ago. It was a huge success. We're going to do House of the Dragon. Lots of interesting play on words to make our dishes, obviously, because that's so much fun. And it's spooky season, so we've got tons and tons of horror movie themes, including stuff from Hellraiser, which is super fun. And you can also find me at our other podcast, which tomorrow we're actually going to talk about horror movies and why we love them and why we hate them so much, sometimes at the same time, on TV dinners. So that is tomorrow at 8:30 Eastern, and we're going to have a couple of special guests. So I think it'll be fun.
That sounds spiffy.
It'll be fun.
I look forward to hearing what people have to say about horror and television and why we do what we do. Why do we want to scare ourselves to death?
Well, not just that, but why do most of the scary movies that we say, oh my gosh, we can't wait to see them, end up with Rotten Tomato scores and Metacritic scores that are like, below 20%? Like, what is it that we're expecting that we're not getting? That's what I want to know from everybody. What is their horror expectation that's not being met? Because those are some low scores. I mean, yeah. So it'll be interesting to hear what people have to say.
This movie scared me and made me feel bad. Low score.
Or this movie didn't scare me at all, and I'm not scared of spiders. Meanwhile, I'm sitting over here going, if you don't turn that thing about spiders off, I'm not going to sleep for a week. So, I mean, there's so much to discuss about this.
Well, I think it's going to be a fun conversation.
Me too.
And speaking of fun conversations, I have something I don't normally have.
Ooh.
A topic for the Wadcast.
Oh my gosh. Is it the various flavors of Pringles? Because I'll totally turn in for that.
That'll be the introduction.
Okay.
But the main beef and potatoes for the show, I guess any kind of meat would be fine for the You know what? I'm getting off track. The main topic for this Friday's Wadcast, episode number 108, it's all about bombs. Bombs, you say? Box office
Ooh.
bombs.
Ooh. Oh, hey, we were just talking about that, weren't we?
Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about the worst of the worst. And we're going to talk about the best of the worst. And we're going to wax poetic about why did this do poorly when I enjoyed it so much. And we're going to, I guess, hammer down on this did poorly over here because it was just terrible. So find out which is which on episode number 108 of the podcast, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, over there at the Wadcast on Facebook. And if you're interested in liking other stuff from Wadco Media, as well as, the stuff that Jen and I do together, make sure you like Wadco Media on Facebook. Maybe visit wadcomedia.com, where you'll find all the pertinent links to the social networking. That's what it's called, social networking. And be able to click through to any of the contact info, as well as the merchandise shop. I'm currently trying to design a 10-to-1 shirt. So if you're down for that, by all means, keep an eye on wadcomedia.com. I probably won't post an announcement or anything, but, bookmark that merch page if you feel like it. You can already get a movie potluck shirt, a Wadcast shirt, a shirt that says writer in quotations. You know how we do. So that is everything for us here tonight. Jen, you had a wonderful list, well thought out as usual.
Thank you, and so did you, Josh. Actually, yours was way different than I expected it to be. So lots of kudos for you for thinking way outside the box on some of them, because I never would have thought I never would have chosen some of the movies that you chose, because they are really unique. So I think that's actually what kind of makes this thing work. We both come at this so differently that we very rarely have duplicates, and definitely not duplicates in the same position, but we just very rarely have duplicates. But I feel like that's actually part of the magic of this. It's so cool to see how it unfolds. So still having a lot of fun.
I
I
completely
was going to say
agree.
much fun, but yeah.
I see you as sitting behind your desk, carefully calculating, how much you like each of these movies, and then, meticulously, putting them in their perfect spots, while I'm like taking off my shirt, chugging a non-alcoholic beer, and going, "Woo, let's do this," and then like throwing darts at a board, going, "That's my number 3."
I'm not sure which is more telling, but you're not wrong. I do sort of agonize about my choices, and specifically the numbers, because it does mean something to me. So yeah, you're not wrong.
Between you and me, I actually do put a lot of thought into this, and I the numbers mean something to me as well, because, well, like I said on this list, I was like, Back to the Future Part 2. I love that movie way more than The Wizard of Oz, but sometimes you just can't deny excellence.
Yeah, I completely agree. I almost feel like, especially for the one that's the Wizard of Oz, you could dress up as any person from the Wizard of Oz, and everyone would immediately know what your Halloween costume was supposed to represent.
Mhm.
However, if you dressed up as one of the Northmen, yeah, nobody's gonna know who you are. So like there is this like level of iconicness to some of the costuming choices on your list that does not exist for mine. I mean, if I show up with 2 coconuts and a pretend horse, you might know that I'm cosplaying Monty Python and the Holy Grail. But if I show up in full medieval garb, you're not going to know I'm dressed up for Man for All Seasons. So it is very interesting. It is very interesting how we made those choices.
I very much look forward to next week's episode, and I think I know of one movie in particular we might have some crossover on. I'm not going to mention what it is now, but if it happens next week, stay tuned. In fact, tune in live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 Pacific, so you can find out if my prediction is correct. I'm not changing my list because I think you might have it on there. In fact, I'm going to include it, not only because I love it, but because I think you might have it on there, and it would be interesting to see if we both go in this direction.
Awesome. I'm really excited. Okay, so creature feature for next week.
In the meantime, I want to wish everybody a good night and a big old thank you for joining us here. I had a lot of fun. I know Jen had a lot of fun, and we are so happy that you joined us for this list night. And if you're listening to us at a later date, don't forget to check out my Letterboxd skit comic. Give it a follow. Check out these lists; they're all there. All my lists are available for public viewing at Letterboxd. And there was something else I was going to say. Hell, if I remember what it is. Oh, I see people do this all the time. And since we're on YouTube and since we're available for download everywhere, I will say this. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and if you're watching on YouTube, hit that old like button and something. That's what they do, right?
That was very podcast professional. Good job, Josh.
Thank you. And hopefully, you know what? I'm going to send this out there as well. If you see these videos on Facebook, if you see them on YouTube, add your own lists. Add your own lists at the bottom of the videos, and we'll check some of those out in future episodes and tell all the people that you decided to give your 2 cents on our lists. So yeah, I think that'll do it. Again, thank you all for joining us. Have a great night. Have a great week. And we will see you next time right here on 10